beautiful introduction that I did write myself. But a little fun things about me, or just things that are outside of my work purview. So I'm a City of Golden Valley resident as well. I live over near Wesley Park. But I also work for the city, which I think is a unique role where I get to use my expertise, my professional work, to benefit my neighbors. And that's not always the possibility for many people in public service, so I really appreciate it. Perfect. I play rugby. This brace is not from rugby, this is genetics. And I'm also the president of my rugby team as well. Love them, they're a wonderful group of men. And queer folk, it's a gay rugby team in town called Minneapolis Mayhem. We're in our 20th anniversary, which I think is really great for a nonprofit sports team to still be around 20 years later. But I also collect records, so if any of you collect records, we can talk about it. Record Store Day is this Saturday, I will not be there. If any of you go to down in the valley, people usually wait out at like 9 o'clock p.m. on Friday for door opening at 9 a.m. on Saturday. It's a bit intense. I have done that once when I was much younger. And then, what other fun facts are about me? I'm originally not from Minnesota. I'm from Wisconsin, from the same area as you, the Milwaukee area. Love it, love being a Wisconsinite. But I do love Minnesota a little bit more. I've been here for 7 years, started up in St. Cloud at the university there, and then made my way down to the Twin Cities, and then now live in Golden Valley with my husband. So yeah, a little bit about me, but we can also talk more about me later. Well, thank you all for taking me on my offer of coming to talk to you all. I've got a presentation, but about the equity plan. You can always come at me with questions and things like that. So just raise your hand, I'll call on you, and we can kind of go back and forth. This is a slimmed down version, which allows for a little bit more conversation around the equity plan. And we can even talk about a little bit about like what's the future of DEI in our current climate as well. And what does that look like for the city, which I'm very proud to say that our council is very much in favor and has put it in their 2030 strategic initiatives. So that I'm really excited to see that there's this still collaboration and connection from as an employee to elected officials. But yeah, we'll begin. So City of Golden Valley 2024 to 2027 equity plan. It's about a 2 to 3 year equity plan when our previous equity plans used to be only a year long. When I came into the role about 2 years ago, I thought, this is too short. I mean, we need some time to grow and show opportunity of growth, but also time to do a proper assessment. Doing assessment in a year span is it's exhausting and doesn't allow for us to see length of time, but then also where are our gaps and where are our growth areas. But this is our first update for the first year relatively. The year anniversary will come up in May, but most of the information here hasn't changed dramatically in just the 3 months since I've been talking about this first update. So the plan is an amalgamation of a couple of things. Handful of reports, a couple of indices, community input, heavy input from our DEI commission, which many of you can be part of. We have openings, so please be part of it. And then evaluation of the previous equity plan. Helped to recraft it. It used to have 4 pillars, and I thought that the mindset of a pillar just didn't make sense to what we're actually doing, but also wasn't communicable to you all community members. So we created 3 focus areas: organizational culture, operationalize equity, and then workforce engagement. And ultimately, what that allowed us to do was to pull in work that happened prior to me coming, which includes work that the DEI Commission was doing, as well as this work group that was established by the City Council called Rising Tides. And they focused heavily on racial equity, where our previous plans kind of distanced themselves. And I said, let's go full force. I'm here, let's make this happen. Let's remake this a priority. And part of that is looking at things around anti-racism. So ultimately, this recrafting of the equity plan looks to enhance our equity mindedness and foster an inclusive and equitable workplace. So what you'll kind of notice throughout my presentation today, as well as the plan if you look it up, is that it's very internal focused. Part of that was we need to write our own ship. We need to do this work effectively and dynamically internally so that it impacts you all as community members just as effectively and dynamically. And then future iterations of the plan are gonna kind of continue to turn that ship more outward and outward and outward, where we're seeing much more engagement with community, looking at community statistics, all of that. Our plan principles are two. The first is this principle or framework called equity by design. Comes from higher education, but ultimately it's about clarity in language, goals, and measures. It seems pretty simple with a plan, right? We want all those in our plans. Equity-mindedness as a guiding paradigm to all of our language, our action, our interactions with employees, one another, as well as community members. Engage at differences in the context of community, so really understanding what are the needs, the specific and nuanced needs that are out there in our community, both with who are present, but also who is predicted to be our community in the next 4, 5, 10 years. Continual process of learning, disaggregating data, and questioning assumptions, ultimately saying, does this still serve its purpose? Are we still getting the impact that we want to have? If not, then let's look at changing that. Are we creating disparities with our work? Are we creating inequities? Are we not creating proper inclusion of our community with our work? Then let's change that. But also pulling that data and taking that data and pulling it apart, saying, okay, this looks like it's impacting our 55 and up population. This looks like it's impacting our population who hold disabilities. This looks like it's impacting our 55 and up and those with disabilities community. So really seeing where are those interconnections around needs. And the last one is pervasive institutional and departmental wide principle, that this isn't just a verbiage that's out there, that it actually becomes embedded in the work that we do and it becomes intertwined. And you'll see sort of a fabric kind of narrative throughout the verbiage, but also imagery too. And then this little brain takes the second principle, equity mindedness, and dives a little bit deeper, making sure that we're race conscious and identity conscious in inquiry, saying, does this impact a particular community? Why? Why does it impact that? What's the historical impact of this? We're a first-ring suburb of Minneapolis, and our neighbors just to the east is North Minneapolis. It's a predominantly Black community, but we're a predominantly white community. It's important to kind of raise those questions. Why might that be? Why does that look like that? And what occurred to make that happen? Also, why does our statistics if you look at our racial and ethnic demographics, it's kind of cool. Why does it look like our youth are more racially and ethnically diverse that are coming up in our population than our older population? So being inquisitive around that and trying to better understand that. Second piece, evidence and outcome-based, pretty simplistic, pretty self-explanatory, making sure that when we are setting goals, we're trying to achieve an outcome so that we can hold ourselves accountable and so you as community can hold us accountable. Equity advancing, just making sure that we're thinking about equity, making sure that we're thinking about access and opportunity. Who doesn't receive access and opportunity? Who over-receives access and opportunity? And how can we create some balance? And then systemically aware, recognizing that the problems that community faces is not their own problem, that they didn't create that problem, that institutions and processes and policies created those gaps and created those problems. And that we as an institution have the power and influence to change that policy and practice to create more inclusive and equitable impact. I sound like I'm on a soapbox kind of thing, right? So our three focus areas, organizational culture, operationalize equity, workforce engagement. Each of these focus areas has 2 outcomes with 4 equity actions. It's a very ambitious plan. And so I want to note that from the jump. There are specific measurables. There's clear people accountable to it and stakeholders. So who's doing that work and who needs to be involved in the development of that work? Most of these equity actions are citywide, and then some are departmental specific, and I don't have those on the presentation today, but it's in the equity plan. So our first area, organizational culture, what are we trying to ultimately achieve? We want to respect, encouragement, and empowerment, create an equitable and inclusive work culture. This culture is built on fundamental values, and understanding how diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism connect employees and the city. Before, we had no central resources for DEI and anti-racism. We had a lack of common understanding regarding DEI and anti-racism, so there was a discrepancy between equality and equity. That's a big gap for me as an equity practitioner to go, we have some work to do, let's further define these, and let's make sure that we understand each. There was a dull, it's the easiest way to say that there was some, but it wasn't very bright. So it was a dull intercultural communication and engagement skill set, and our internal policies that are not employee informed. I think all of us have been in a workplace where we're like, why is this happening? What's going on here? We don't get the answers. And then when we raise a concern, those concerns aren't brought into the recreation of a policy. Well, our new practice is that it is. We reach out to employees and say, how is this impacting you? Do you understand this policy? Do you know how to advocate for yourself with this policy? And using that information to recraft our policies so that they're equitable from the recreation. Now, we have DEI and anti-racism resources are being built out. So we have a central location, the different departments can go and tap into, find reputable resources. It's really cool, I'm really proud of it. DEI Essentials training conducted. So we did a DEI Essentials training with all of our employees and we'll be continuing that on as a trimester basis for new employees to be participatory. We're working with Metro State to do that. They've been a great partner. We have a phased approach to enhance intercultural skill set and be implemented. We're using the intercultural development inventory for that. It's a really great resource that takes a look at people's intercultural skill sets, whether it's communication, relationship building, and so on. And helps them build a plan to continue to build those skills, and then come away from that going, okay, I feel like I've been able to move across this sort of intercultural mindedness. And then updated employee policies that are informed by employees. Second area is organization or operationalize equity. Description of this is using systemic approaches for decision making and process project development, implementation, and evaluation. So it's not just about how we're creating and implementing it, but how we're going back to evaluating it and then providing that info back. So creates equitable outcomes, improves results, and removes disparities for the city, for those the city serves. We also apply equity in all work using tools, frameworks, and lenses. This helps to achieve goals in a more timely fashion, but also a much more critical fashion, and improve accountability in metrics and standards. So these tools and these lenses we are creating because I only am a team of two. It's myself and our community connection specialist. We can't be everywhere. So we need to create resources for our departments to utilize when we can't be in the room with them, when we can't be at a committee meeting or a work group meeting. Here, use these resources. We've crafted them. They're appropriate for your department. They are reflective of your departmental work or the city work, and that way it has a better impact. So before, we had inaccessible and confusing tool for informing equitable decision-making. We received that feedback from employees directly through an employee equity survey, which we'll be doing again post this plan to assess it. No resources regarding effective and inclusive community engagement approaches. So ultimately, we just go and engage. Well, we really need to critically think about how are we engaging? Are we informing you as a community? Are you going to be decision makers? Are we simply gathering input? What does that mean? And what does that promise to you all as a community? If we just inform you, the promise is that we're gonna continually inform you. But what happens when we break that promise or that sort of social contract? It means that we aren't doing our work and we're creating confusion, and that's not okay. We had unsupported efforts for departmental equity actions, and this is where departmental equity actions comes in. So each department has their own, they have 2 equity actions per department. And we had a weak infrastructure to support equity work across the city and community. Our equity infrastructure was just 2 pieces. It was our internal equity team full of employees, and then our executive leadership team. Those are our directors of our departments. That's not an infrastructure, unfortunately. An infrastructure is pulling all of community together, which includes you all. Now, we have an updated tool for equity decision making, and we just launched it last week. So, created a community engagement resource, and we'll be test trialing it soon. We have more support and resourced departmental equity actions. So I'm meeting with every single department on a trimester basis, checking in on their equity actions, seeing if they need resources, pulling in my contacts, my organizations that I'm participatory in to see if they can be of support. And then we have increased engagement with community to build out an equity work ecosystem. So what that looks like is this, the fabric mentality, right? And making sure that equity is part of the fabric. So the equity infrastructure is a vision statement. So in the fall, we're ideally looking to launch, right? And we have a welcome statement for the city, but one of the asks from previous work groups was that we have a racial equity vision statement. What do we mean by racial equity as a community? So we're looking at building out a community engagement plan and an approach to gather input from you all as community members. Engaging with community organizations such as this. We're also working with GV Pride and Sweet Potato Comfort Pie. Schools, I've been connecting and going into the schools and connecting with some of the identity-based student groups. So when I connected with BREC, presented at their MLK symposium, but also connected with their Gender and Sexuality Alliance in their middle school to talk to them about what does equity mean. And as a previous LGBT Resource Center director, it touched my heart. I was like, oh, these kids, they're so cool. Talked with the student council over at Cooper High School. And been just slowly but surely connecting with these schools, helping students recognize that they are part of our community and that they can also be civilly active in various ways. So that was really, it's been wonderful to see student leadership. Love it, love student leadership. EAT, that's our equity advancement team. That's what we just call our internal DEI committee. Our leadership team, tools, so the tools that I talked about, the equity decision-making toolkit and the community equity participation toolkit. Council is also part of this. Our commissions, so our DEI commission and then our Peace Commission have been heavily involved, but we'll also be building out work and opportunity for other commissions. So here in Parks and Rec, we have our Open Space and Rec Commission, so engaging with them, seeing how we can build DEI into their work, and then even our physical infrastructure as a city. We need to make our physical infrastructure, our buildings here, more accessible. City Hall has some accessibility needs still. We are missing some things that allow people to fully participate. Thinking about once I saw a wonderful community member with a child, and the only way that they could participate was to come with their child to a city council meeting. Well, do we have an option or a space for families with children that do need to come and participate in a council meeting, maybe need to step out for a moment to take care of their kid? Unfortunately, we don't. We have an option, but we don't have a dedicated option. So thinking about that, but also looking at our physical infrastructure across our city, we're working on, community development is working on a crosswalk updated policy. So determining what our crosswalks look like, how we're communicating that to you all. I think many of us have gone through a crosswalk or gone through an intersection. It's like, why isn't a crosswalk here? Or why is this kind of crosswalk here? Well, we're taking that input and building that into the policy from the jump so that when it comes to you as a community, you have that information, you feel informed, and that way you understand what are the decisions that we are making as a city around your infrastructure. And the last one is, so departmental equity actions. Each department has two. They're measurable and they have connections. So what this means is that they're connected to other organizations, some professional organizations. They're connected to other plans that the city has or that the county has or even the state, maybe federally. I do a trimester check-in and then they will be posted soon on the GV website. I'm having some issues with, we're using a platform to track and it's not working correctly technologically. So I've been in contact with the company, being like, what's going on here? But some common themes along this is better and more equitable procurement processes and approaches, diversifying recruitment and retention efforts, so ultimately going out to different recruitment opportunities that are across the Twin Cities, and maybe even further. I think we even went out to St. Cloud recently to say, hey, we've got some really awesome city jobs that you can come and be an awesome employee in Golden Valley. Increase DEI and anti-racist knowledge, application, and leadership development, assessment of current processes for inequities and disparities, deliberate assessment of community impact, and proactive engagement of community impact. So the last one is making sure that we're proactively thinking of how are we building in community input, community engagement into this work so that it ultimately impacts the needs that are present. So last one is workforce engagement. Overarching kind of language around it is we're engaging in professional development to strengthen equity mindedness, so ensures long-term success for the city, enhances employee skills, and create and maintain unbiased services. I think we all want that. We all want to go to a service and make sure that whatever identities or lived experiences that we have not only inform that work, but don't determine our outcome. That our age doesn't determine the behavior that we're receiving. That our income doesn't determine the process that we're engaging in, those kind of things. We want to support employees' careers, so build an empowered and valued workforce, and then create a sense of belonging. Who doesn't want that, right? Everyone wants to have that sense of belonging. They want to feel like they are participatory in something. You all are here in Rotary because you have this sense of belonging. You have a pull, a connection to this. So before, we had little to no tracking of employees and hiring processes related to DEI best practices. We have sustained efforts for DEI learning and engagement. Now we're continuing that and expanding it. Underdeveloped DEI and anti-racist professional development programming. And then we had no tracking of employee advancement data or specific metrics. We are now tracking that, saying, okay, who's participating in what? What does this look like? How are people feeling about it? And are we finding that this is being implemented in their work? Now we've updated hiring processes and ability to collect and analyze data, continued sustaining and expanding DEI learning, created and implementing a multi-tiered DEI learning development program, which has been really exciting. Employees find great value out of it, which I really appreciate. We're getting immediate feedback from employees saying that they see how they can put this into their work, and that we're taking these very academic concepts, which I think is sort of a negative about my profession. I love my profession. As was shared, I've been doing it for 10 years, but it can stay very heady and it can stay very academic. But what I'm really proud of is that we've been able to make it feel practical and applicable to people's work depending upon the department that they're in. We're providing direct examples, we're listening and seeing how does DEI actually find its way, or how has it already been in their work, because many times it has. And then build out strategy to collect and analyze data for workforce advancement. So what this looks like is just tracking employees and seeing how they've been, our internal succession, but also who is leaving, when are they leaving, what are the reasons that they're leaving, because it can be many things. I have an employee that's leaving already for family issues, right? It's not a problem of the workplace, they just have life things that need to come up. So tracking that information as well, but also we have employees who are retiring. We have employees who are finding advancement elsewhere, and making sure that we're also creating a culture that values that too. We would love to retain everyone, but that's not always the option. And making sure that we are investing in those employees and know that they have the opportunity to grow their career. So, progress tracking. So we use a dashboard. It's updated on a semi-annual basis. If not before then, there is a dashboard that's in development for those departmental equity actions. We're having some tricky time with that. But there is semi-annual email communication that goes out to all employees and city council. GV Solution Center, it's our internal intranet. Updates are made there. Our city website also has our updates. And then our communication plan. You'll see updates in the city's newsletter, CCX interviews, and social media. So, thank you all. And that is it.
Any questions for Seth?
You had one, right?
I have a question. With all the things that have been happening in the last few weeks,
Yeah.
and the attitude of the current, leaders, how are you handling that?
Yeah. I will say that when that news broke and that information on its way to all of our ears and eyes. I work directly with our leadership. Our leadership is incredibly in favor of this work, and we have a really great relationship also with our city council. So just making that present, saying, hey, this is at the federal level, this is how it could show up at the city level. What's going on, like, what is our own temperature on this? And almost, I mean, maybe within like a couple of weeks after that, City Council debuted their 2030 strategic initiatives, and one of those is to continue to work on embedding equity. So worked with them, also took the pulse of our equity advancement teams, or internal committee, and said, how are you all feeling about this? Like, you all are doing this work as just employees. This is on top of your job as a, let's say, city engineer, or as a police officer, or as I'm trying to think of who else is on there, our forester. How is this making you all feel? And they said, let's continue to do this work. We see the value, we love the value that it brings, and it makes our work better, and we're seeing that impact almost immediately with the community. So really tapping into those who are doing the work and getting that pulse, and knowing that we have support. And then also working with our DEI commission, and tapping into them and looking at and getting a pulse from them. And they said, we're still excited around this work, let's continue it. So.
Seth, are you able to stay for a couple of minutes for more questions?
Sure.
Okay, well, give a round of applause. I've got something for you, Seth.
Oh, brilliant.
This is a small token of our appreciation for you coming and presenting for us. We have a set of note cards, and they're photographs from around Golden Valley. Yes, and so there's a set of note cards for you. Very humble but adorable gift.
I love it. I'm gonna slip it in right here.
There you go. And he's willing to stay around for some more questions if you have them. So give him another round of applause, please. And if you rise and say the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And fifth, have fun. Okay, wonderful. Have a wonderful day, everybody.